Hello and welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about how believers value Jesus. And before I get started, what I want to just say from the get-go is that we are going to talk about the ways that believers should value Jesus. And you may be watching this video and thinking, well, I know I should value Jesus this way, but I don't. I'm having trouble with this. And that's actually one of the big ideas behind this video. We want to both see how it ought to be in our hearts, and then also maybe address our own hearts, confess a sin if we don't value Jesus the way that we ought to, or seek God's help if we want to value Jesus the way that we should. And one other thing I'd just say before we get started is that the previous video we did was entitled Jesus Values Believers. And that's one great way for you to be helped to love Jesus, is to first see that Jesus values you. Jesus loves you. And so watch that video, reflect on Jesus' love for you, and be helped to love Jesus back, to value Jesus the way that you should. Well, the Bible's teaching then is that believers should value Jesus above all the world and everything in it. So there's really nothing we should value more than the Lord. Psalm 73:25 says, "Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you." And again, that may not describe you now, but there is something about that verse that says that's the way it should be. That's the way I want to be. Lord, help me to be this way. And so we then should value Christ above all things and all people. Owen tries to drive it home this way. He says, Christ and a dungeon, Christ and a cross is infinitely sweeter than a crown, a scepter without him to our souls. So the big idea here then is that we would take Christ and hard times over good earthly circumstances and not have Christ. We value Christ that much. That is the way we should value Christ, the way we must value Christ, and we honor Christ when we value him in this way. Christ then is to be esteemed by us as excellent, the most excellent person, the most excellent thing. There's no person or thing we value above him. He's the greatest. And sometimes, though, we get sidetracked from valuing Christ by our service to Christ. This is a challenge, of course, to Christians. We get so caught up in, I'm doing many great things for Christ, and we begin to value the work we do for Christ in some odd way more than we value Christ himself. And we want to be on guard against valuing our own Christian service, finding our identity more in I'm the person who works here, I'm the person who ministers there. We want to guard ourselves from becoming more identified and valuing more our service to Christ than Christ himself. And Owen explains it this way: once Christ appears to the soul, when he is known in his excellency, all these things, as without him, have their paint washed off, their beauty fades, their desirableness vanishes, and the soul is not only contented to part with them all, but puts them away as a defiled thing. Again, the big idea here is that we must first value Christ so much, right? That if you find yourself valuing your service to Christ above Christ, the main direction to head is to turn to Christ, look to Christ, value him as you should, and once you see Christ in all his glory, even your service to him will be seen as nothing and less than nothing and not worth anything compared to the greatness of Christ. And so again, the idea though is don't let anything become more valuable to you than Christ. And then again, the solution, if you find yourself having things be more valuable in your own estimation than Christ, is to look to Christ, meditate on Christ, think on Christ. And the more that you draw your attention to Christ, the more everything else will appear as pitiful, ugly, defiling. You're ready to put it away because it's nothing, I say, compared to the greatness of Christ. So may God help us then turn our eyes to Christ and seek his help that we might not value anything above Christ, because Christians, those who trust in Jesus for the forgiveness of sins, value him above everything.